just about 100% of fuel. Stage 1 is at 99% liquid oxygen and at 90% for stage 2. We'll continue topping off both stages until about T-minus 2 minutes to keep the propellants as cold and therefore as dense as possible in order to fit as much propellant onto the vehicle as we can. Around the T-minus 7 minute mark, we began our engine chill procedure. The propellants are much colder than the engines, and so it's important to get the engines to the correct temperature beforehand by slowly flowing propellant through them. Liquid oxygen in particular is so much colder that it would turn into a gas upon first contact, which would be a pretty hard start for the engine. The strongback cradle is opening and will slightly retract away from the rocket. The strongback is the structure that's standing immediately next to Falcon 9 on your screen, not the larger gray structure. It will recline more fully as Falcon 9 moves the time. And you heard the strongback lower has begun. At T-minus 3 minutes, we'll be performing an engine wiggle. That's checking the thrust vector control system to make sure that the Merlin engines will be able to properly steer Falcon 9 during ascent. And at T-minus 60 seconds, you'll hear that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's internal flight computers have taken over the countdown. And you can see the cradle
cradle's full open.
Is opening and is just finished opening on your screen there. The little arm is just beneath the fairing. One more interesting change for this mission relates to the Merlin engines themselves. In Block 4, the engines were used with a constant chamber pressure. Because engine thrust depends on both the chamber pressure and external atmospheric pressure, the Block 4 engine's thrust would slowly increase by up to 10 or 15,000 pounds per engine during ascent. For Block 5, we'll be maintaining a constant thrust of 190,000 pounds until cutoff, which means we'll actually be slowly decreasing the engine's chamber pressures over time to compensate for decreasing atmospheric pressure.
The stage 1 launch load is closed out.
Otherwise, the drone ship is on standby in the Atlantic Ocean. The payload is healthy and go for launch. The range is also go for launch. And at this point, we're inside of T-minus 3 minutes and getting pretty close to T0.
Strongback lower is ended. Strongback's at 88.2 degrees.
So let's listen in to the last couple minutes of terminal count.
Stage 2 LUX load's closed out. And Falcon 9's on internal power. Gas closeouts.
AFTS is ready for launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
LD go for launch.
Minus 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 is at flight pressures.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, liftoff.
Power telemetry nominal.
And you saw Falcon 9 lift off in a beautifully clear shot there at 4:14 p.m. Eastern. At T plus 10 seconds, the thrust vector control system
Vehicle is supersonic.
tilted Falcon to begin a pitch kick maneuver to get it going sideways. You just heard that we're going supersonic, and we're about to go through max Q when the rocket's pushing hardest against the atmosphere.
Vehicle is experiencing maximum dynamic pressure.
We've successfully achieved that major milestone of every rocket launch. We're actually decreasing the thrust in our engines a little bit around the time of max Q to minimize some of those forces. Coming up about 50 seconds from now,
And back engine chill.
there will be 3 events in quick succession. The main engines will cut off, the 2 stages will separate, and the second stage will start its Merlin vacuum engine, which you heard is just beginning its own chill procedure. Cutoff happening just a few seconds from now.
Pico.
Stay separation.
And there you saw those events occurring just as planned. You can even see some of the flicker from Merlin vacuum engine plume as it flicker in the cameras as that plume sort of interacted with the top of the interstage there for a moment. The next major event is the fairing deploy coming up just a few seconds from now. That's the second stage that will be deploying its fairing.
Vehicle is on nominal trajectory.
And there you see the fairings following away behind. They're light, they're made of carbon fiber and aluminum honeycomb, but they still represent excess mass, so we no longer need them once we get out of the atmosphere.
Acquisition of signal Bermuda.
For those of you just joining us, we had 3 events in rapid succession. We had a main engine cutoff from that first stage, we had a stage separation event, and then we had a second stage light, followed quickly then by a fairing separation. Everything's going great right now. Falcon 9 is looking pretty good. Right now, let's go over what we can see on your screen. On the left-hand side, that's a camera mounted on the top of the first stage of the rocket, looking down towards the 9 Merlin engines at the bottom. In that view, you can see those titanium grid fins. They slowly deployed just after stage separation. And those grid fins will allow the Falcon 9 first stage to guide itself back down towards the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. You can see brief flashes of those cold gas thrusters as they guide, provide additional control authority for that first stage. On the right-hand side of your screen is a camera mounted at the very bottom of the second stage, looking down towards the Merlin vacuum nozzle. Of course, at the very other end of that stage is the Bangabandhu Satellite-1. Right now, that Merlin vacuum engine is glowing red hot with those exhaust gases as it propels Bangabandhu Satellite-1 into its final geostationary transfer orbit. Lost video from the cameras on that first stage momentarily. We'll see if we can get them back. One thing that is unique about this mission is that the second stage engine cutoff is going to happen just before the landing, coming up in about 20 seconds or so. You can see in your mission status bar at the very bottom, the second stage engine cutoff and landing are right on top of each other, so be prepared for those two events to happen in quick succession. After a brief interruption in the video signal, we are looking at the 25th recovered first stage of a Falcon 9 vehicle. and covers a wide variety of broadcast and telecommunication applications, including satellite television, internet access, and emergency communication services, and of course much more. There's the startup of the entry burn. At this point, the Falcon 9 first stage is actually only about 10% of the mass that it was on the pad, so it's actually pretty empty of fuel and liquid oxygen right now. So this entry burn is only going to last a few more seconds before cutting off. And there it is.
And stage 1 entry burn check.
As that first stage gets closer and closer to the surface of the Earth, we should be able to see features. Top of that second stage by way of a payload adapter fitting. In about 10 seconds, we should be able to see that payload adapter fitting release, and Bangabandhu Satellite-1 will be on its way. Let's watch that.
Payload separation confirmed.
And you saw it